Hi everyone, good morning. On behalf of Trainosis, welcome you all for this webinar. And this webinar is basically to introduce you as to how to build ML applications for enterprises. So the idea of this webinar is to give you an introduction of how machine learning is going to impact future applications, and then to show you certain applications which involve finance, right? Which involve computer vision and which involves NLP. So all of these three areas or domains of applications are being benefited now by ML applications. And the development of all these applications will require a wide variety of understanding of mathematics, statistics, data sciences, and then certain specific computing strategies, right, which involve high performance computing, parallel computing, GPU programming, and so on and so forth. So the idea of introducing you to this type of webinar is that you would be having a fair idea of how to proceed with the various applications which you will be developing in future, and to uh, take such training programs which we would be offering. And we would be offering customized training programs as well. So any need based programs which you feel would be useful, you can contact us and we would be delivering it, right? So I per se train people on machine learning, GPUs, Python programming, because that is the very basic of it. And then GPU programming, parallel programming, high performance computing, then to some extent DevOps, Kubernetes, and all these things, right? So let us start. So you can type in your questions in the chat box, or we can wait till the end. You can ask the questions, I will answer. So anyways is okay with me. So let's start with this training webinar now. Okay, so yeah, so let us try to understand the relationship, right, of data sciences to AI, ML, and DL. So if you see artificial intelligence was uh, not it's not something which is very new, right? It has been there with us since about 2 decades now. And it basically meant that how do you incorporate human intelligence, right, into machines. So if you see the Amazon purchase prediction, or your email categorization of emails into spam or uh, ad mails, or your own private mails, right? That type of work, if a machine can do, that's what basically incorporated artificial intelligence. Now artificial intelligence is a very broad area, right? And to that, if you mix, right, various scientific methods, algorithms, and something which is related as big data, that is where the intersection of data sciences and artificial intelligence in totality comes. Because of all of this type of new applications which are there on our mobile phones, on WhatsApp, right, on Twitter, we've got a lot of data with us. And this data actually has to be cleaned, right, and has to be used appropriately for decision making. Till now that was not possible because data was not there, and there were not enough methods and compute infrastructure available to us which would implement, right, something which was deep learning. So let us try to understand how we evolved from that stage of artificial intelligence, which was just in research domain, wherein people were talking of trying to develop systems which could play chess, right, which could play chess or AlphaGo better than human beings and they defeated human beings. That was the era wherein people thought of artificial intelligence and it all started. And we had these machine learning applications also being developed, right? You had general machine learning methods, right? You had SVM, you had various classifiers, you had random forests. All of these are statistical based techniques which people used in machine learning. And then you had deep learning wherein you are talking of implementing machine learning at a larger scale, right? At a very complex scale, in a sense that you have got a lot of data, right, which could not be processed with generic machines. So you had GPUs into picture. We'll see all of that. But so that is how, no, the intersection of data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning is at present, right? So it is all very thin line between all of this, but there is a lot of difference technically when you talk of machine learning and deep learning today. But somehow people directly cannot go to deep learning, so we are trying to link the existing knowledge which we had in terms of machine learning to extrapolate it to something which is deep learning now. But technically there is a lot of difference. We will see the difference in brief as to what is the difference between machine learning and deep learning in our next slides. Okay, so this is how the intersection of data sciences, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning is going to play a major role in the application development in future, right? So this is how actually it all started. So we have a stage wherein these all things are actually intersecting and there is a convergence between all of this. Okay, so yeah, so now let us try to understand the applications of machine learning. So we, as I told you, right, you had machine learning which was already there. Okay, and then you had these recommender systems, pattern recognition, stock market analysis, natural language processing, and information retrieval. These are all the areas wherein machine learning was playing a role. Now because of huge amount of data which we have with us, right, the efficiency of these algorithms improved. So you come up with better recommender systems, you come up with better pattern recognition techniques, right? Your stock market analysis efficiency improved, right? So, and then you had got a lot of natural language processing applications which were developed using machine learning. So these all improved because of, no, the way in which people developed algorithms, the way in which we have got the hardware with us now, right? All of these actually improved. So the efficiency, okay, of these applications improved as compared to which was there 2 decades back, right? So this is how actually machine learning is evolving now at present. Okay, so let us try to go a bit deep into what machine learning is. Machine learning, as I told you, is trying to make systems, okay, systems think like human beings. So you are trying to incorporate, right, human intelligence into these systems. So how do you do it? There are two basic ways of trying to develop it, and then there is a third approach which people have started now thinking, which comes under machine learning, is something which we will discuss. So machine learning broadly that way is classified into two types of learning, and then you have this third type of a learning which is getting introduced now, right, which is in talks today. So you have something called as supervised learning, you have got unsupervised learning, and then you have got something which is called as reinforcement learning. So all of these three types of methods of making our systems learn, okay, have got different concepts. In a sense, you have this supervised learning which will help you for classifying the data, or which will help you to do some good regression, wherein when you talk of unsupervised learning, you can end up with clustering your data, okay, and you can use unsupervised learning for dimensionality reduction of your data, and then try to apply that reduced dimensionality of your data for certain application development. And then you have got this reinforcement learning, which talks of developing learning tasks, okay, in such a manner that method, okay, which is used as reinforced type of a learning, okay, is being now used by lot of developers, lot of application developers, okay. So this is broad classification of machine learning. We are not going into the details of anything today, but I'm just trying to give you an overall picture of when people talk of machine learning, you have got three approaches, right? One is supervised learning, one is unsupervised learning, one is reinforcement learning. So all these three together, if you try to implement it in your applications, when you try to code it for your applications, is when you start learning machine learning, okay. So so let us try to understand each of this with a brief example, right? When I told about something called as supervised learning is a mechanism of machine learning wherein you tend to give certain specific data to your system or an algorithm, okay, and using that data, the system tries to learn, okay, it tries to mimic how humans being learn, right? So for example, let us try to understand a problem of house price prediction. So in the sense, we are trying to predict, okay, the rate of a house. So that is what is the problem. So we're trying to predict, given the area of the house, okay, of course we can have various other parameters, but I'm, for the sake of example, I'm just trying to tell, given the size of a house, okay, how is that my algorithm is going to predict, okay. So let us try to see this type of a problem which we need to solve using supervised learning. So when I told that we are trying to use supervised learning, this means that I am trying to make my system learn by giving some examples. So what do I mean by that? So let us say we have a data set which contains n samples in this form, right? X1 y1, x2 y2, x3 y3, okay, so on and so forth up till xn yn. So what does it mean? I am trying to give my algorithm this particular information, that given x1, okay, this is the price of the house. Given x2, this is the price of that house. Given x3, this is the price of that house, so on and so forth. So I have got a lot of data with me, and I tell, given xn, I have got this price of the house, which is yn. So when I now do this, I train my system and it understands this, right? It has got this information. So let us say I have given this information that, okay, this house, this much price, this house, this much price, this house, this much price, so on and so forth. So my system knows all of this, and then I try to give the input to a system after this is trained with this data, that, okay, what is the value of the house given that x is equal to 800. So now it has to give me some answer, and this particular answer which it gives, it would not have seen any value of the house which is given with the condition that x is equal to 800. It might have seen the value of the house for x is equal to 500, for x is equal to 1000, for x is equal to 1500, or x is equal to 1200, or whatever. But it would not have seen, or it would not have learned the value of my house with x is equal to 800. So it is going to predict something. So this is what comes under the category of supervised learning, right? I hope this is clear. So supervised learning, you are giving a lot of data, you given the examples, and then you train my algorithm or the system, and it would predict in future as to what would be, right, the house value, right? So this is how it's going to be supervised learning. So now let us try to go a bit deeper into it. What is the mathematical concept which we would be using, right? So you have now understood that we have this sample which we are going to use it for training, and now the task is that we have x square feet of house we are going to predict, right? So the concept is it will predict. Now what are you going to do mathematically about it? So we are trying to actually fit a linear or a quadratic function to the data set. So this is the data set which we have got, okay, with us. And now we are supposed to be doing something. Either we fit a linear function to this or a quadratic function to this. So mathematically we are trying to fit in a function which will satisfy this particular sample, and then once we are able to fit this either linearly or with a quadratic equation, ultimately we would be in a position to put in this value so that it gives us the result of that function, and that is what is going to predict the value for us, right? So this is how we are going to link. Now there are two things I told you about. When you talk of supervised learning, you are trying to understand two things. We can do regression or we can do classification. Okay, so when we talk of regression, what does it mean? And when we talk of classification, what does it mean? So see, this line demarcates the group of houses. Okay, given some value, whether my house is a house or a townhouse, right? This is a type of classification which I will have to do. So when I'm able to do this, okay, and classify or group my houses into either a house or a townhouse, okay, I will do classification. So what is the difference essentially between a classification and a regression? I do classification for something like the task of predicting the type of residence is a classification task, and classification task is basically labeling, okay, it as a discrete variable. So you can label this particular thing, okay, as a house, this particular value as a townhouse. So this is discretely labeling these values, okay, as either a house or a townhouse. So that is what is classification. You are labeling some variable, right? Whereas when you talk of regression, you are trying to work with a continuous variable. So something like a continuous variable, not discrete variables. So if you can label discrete variables, it is classification. But when you're trying to work with continuous variables, like for example the price prediction or the stock value or something like this, that comes under the category of regression, right? So the same task, okay, if done for discrete values, it's called as classification, but for continuous variables or continuous values, it's called as regression, right? So this is something which has been taken from statistics. So link statistics with machine learning, right? So when you talk of unsupervised learning now, okay, so for supervised learning, you have to give in the data, you have to give in the samples in the form wherein you know x1, for that x1 what is y1, for x2 what is y2, and you use all that data to train my algorithm or network, okay, or a system. And then it can predict something which it has not seen. But in case of unsupervised, we don't have any labels or any information. Okay, so the idea is I simply have the data set like x1, x2, x3 up till xn, but I don't have any y1 values, right? So what is the goal of unsupervised learning? I need to find interesting structures or interesting patterns in the data. Okay, so my system is unaware of the relationship between x1 and y1, but I need to find out some relationship or some interesting structure in the data, right? So that is what is basically the difference between supervised learning and unsupervised learning. That's why when I say that we will have to find out the interesting structure in case of unstructured learning or unstructured data, that is where I come up with something which is called as clustering. Then I try to group them, right? Based on certain parameters, I try to group them because I don't have any other information, right? So what I do, I try to group them and then I try to classify them. Okay, so based on this, right, I can do some pattern understanding, and then that I classify it like this, something like this is going to happen, right? So this is what is unsupervised learning. So now let's try to understand like how do you do it, what is clustering. So that's what I told you, like we will try to group them and try to come up with our own analysis, and then you have got a lot of various ways of trying to do this clustering. You have something which is called as k-means clustering, right? So basically k-means clustering or k-fold clustering will let you know try to divide this data into various clusters or various groups based on patterns. So maybe this is these are only two clusters. If you want to divide it into three clusters or four clusters, you choose, right, the centroid, and then you can tell that okay, this can be one cluster, or this can be one cluster, or this can be one cluster, or this can be another cluster. So something like this. So the ways in which you try to have the centroid fixed and the clusters um, generated, right, you can do a lot of clustering. Okay, various types of clustering. So we are not going into the details, but the idea is that you have supervised learning, you have unsupervised learning, so you can understand your data better, right? And then this is used for, right, basically bioinformatics type of applications. You can cluster the genes, right? You can cluster the various biological data sets, okay, and then try to come up with your own analysis, okay, on genomic data. So this is just an example as to how basically you can pictorially tell, okay, and then computationally using these statistical algorithms cluster all of this data, right? So that is how basically people use it for bioinformatic applications, okay, for clinical pathways and all of this type of applications. So uh, coming down to the third portion of way of learning, okay, so this is what is reinforcement learning, and people are using it now a lot. Okay, so this particular way of learning will help you to collect the data interactively. So the idea is we will have some strategy and collect the feedbacks, and based on the feedbacks we are going to improve the strategy. So it is something like we have this data, we train it, we get the feedback, and then again go on training it. So it is something like a plan, do, check, act, PDCA type of a cycle. Okay, so you have planned, you do it, you again check it, and then you act. So it is something like you are trying to collect the data, do the training, get the feedback, again collect the data, do the training, get the feedback, something like this. So this is what is reinforcement learning. So let us try to see some examples of this as to how you can do this. 1 minute, give me 1 sec. So the basic idea is I wanted to show you a video which basically lets the human, okay, or a robot learning to walk, okay, to the right. So you have 10 iterations. What's going to happen in this case is it's going to learn, and then with 20 iterations it's going to do it better, and with about 80 iterations it's going to still do better, and with about 210 iterations of learning, okay, it's going to still do better. So this is what basically uh, is generally used in case of reinforcement learning. Okay, so I will show you that video. Give me a sec. Yeah. So, for example, uh, we are trying to do it with 10 iterations, right? So, if you see this, it's trying to walk towards the right. My algorithm is trying to make the system, okay, learn in such a fashion that that robot, okay, wants to learn how to walk to right. So that was for 10 iterations. Now for 20 iterations, let us try to understand it. Like, has it performed better? Yeah. So it is trying to learn, right? That is what is reinforcement learning. So it for 80 iterations, just try to see how it's going to learn. Yeah. So then for 210 iterations, if you see, it's actually going to learn a lot, because it tries to understand, okay, how it has learned from the previous 20 steps or 30 steps, and then it tries to improve, okay, it's not going to fall. So this is how it's going to happen. So this is what is reinforcement learning, right? So yeah. Yes. So this is what I thought I'll show you. And now let us try to understand how is that we are going to develop all such applications, right? All such applications could be developed using a lot of frameworks which are available. So we're talking of artificial intelligence in general and machine learning. Okay. So we have got something called as Apache Spark, we have got Chainer, we have got Cafe2, we have got TensorFlow, we have got Keras, we have got Scikit-learn, we have got PyTorch, CNTK, Theano. All of this, right, are required. Like, it's not that all are required, but majority of them will help you to develop, no, applications which involve artificial intelligence and machine learning. Okay, some are used for real time data analysis, some are used for deep learning, some are used for machine learning, right? All of these frameworks could be delivered as training. So if you people are interested, we can go and deep into each of these, do hands on, right, for various types of applications, various type of domains. Okay, so that, no, you start developing your own applications and your own products. Okay, So this can be actually implemented, right? Once you develop certain applications, you can implement it, develop it, do inferencing on the mobile, on the small devices, right, on the edge. Okay, that's what is called as AI on the edge now. So all of this, right, could be learned, right, and you can develop applications. So now, why this boom in AI now? Now, one of the reasons is these three reasons are very, very important, as I have been telling you. So you got a lot of data with you, you have got GPUs with you, or a lot of compute power with you, and then you have deep neural networks. So initially, when AI started, it was not that neural networks were not there, right? You had got neural networks maybe 40 years back or 4 decades back, but because of the want of compute power, right, the development in this area had stopped. So even if you wanted to develop, the computational aspect of it was such complex, and your systems were not conducive in calculating those computations in real time. So actually you could not use it. So it was just scientific research and for applications which were not in too much real time, which was uh, required. Okay, so people did not pursue that so much, and it stalled to some level. But after the GPUs were released by Nvidia, it so happened the structure of GPUs was very, very conducive for developing applications which involved neural networks. And the neural networks involved, or which were executed on GPUs, were so deep that they were performing fantastically very well, and they were executing very fast, right? So this was the reason why people got suddenly interested into deep learning. And deep learning actually improved machine learning to such an extent that this, okay, uh, is to some level, okay, now the basics which were considered not solvable or which were not achievable, now these are considered basics, and you have come down to a stage wherein people are talking of deep learning. So this is how it has changed. Now in production, if you see, you can see deep learning everywhere, right? From internet, cloud, medicine, biology, media, entertainment, security, defense, autonomous machines, autonomous vehicles, autonomous driving. So if you talk of image classification, speech recognition, language translation, language processing, then diabetic grading, drug discovery, talk of video captioning, video search, okay, face detection, video surveillance. And in times of COVID, you have seen how video surveillance, face detection, right, all of this has helped people, okay, a lot. And then you are talking of autonomous vehicles, you are talking of pedestrian detection, lane tracking, right, recognizing traffic signs, autonomous vehicles driving on their own, and so on and so forth. So all of this, right, requires machine learning. And extreme machine learning, when you talk about, right, you come across something which is called as deep learning, right? So these are the areas wherein deep learning is used nowadays. Now let us try to understand the difference between traditional machine learning, which we have been doing, and deep learning. So in case of traditional machine learning, and when you talk of machine perception, right, people used to use handcrafted features. So if you had this raw data, you decided, right, which are the features which you need to choose, and then you used SVM or neural network, and then you came up with your results, right? So this was image. For audio processing, right, you had the features which you wanted to use, and then you used hidden Markov model or PCA or whatever, and then you tried to develop in your applications. The same is with text, right? You had this graph type of decomposition of your text, and then you did clustering, you did LDA, you did LSA. and then you used it for your applications. So this was how machine learning actually progressed when we started machine learning, right? And now when you say the deep learning thing, okay, the idea is that deep learning approaches, you only have to do training, you model the deep neural networks, you train it, and then you directly deploy it. Okay, so this concept of feature extraction actually in case of machine learning is totally gone. It is not required, because from the data directly, okay, the model tries to extract features on its own. So this is the beauty of deep learning, and this is the beauty of these models. So to some extent, people are unaware of what's happening inside because it is treated as a black box. But from the application point of view or product development point of view, ultimately here, okay, whatever was required, okay, you are getting. So the idea is you will have to understand how this works to develop better applications, to develop your own thinking, to develop your own models in future. Because once these features are extracted, okay, and these features are so nicely extracted that you would not have even felt that that could have been a feature, right? When you are doing it manually in terms of machine learning. So the idea is the patterns getting extracted because of these deep learning methodologies are so nice, and those features are extracted in such a fashion that you will not miss anything. That is why deep learning is now in demand. So this is what we are trying to do. So this is the difference between machine learning and deep learning, okay, and there are various tools of doing it. So let us try to understand the cycle. We have this training thing. We will train our network, okay, we will basically try to do something like image classification, and then what is that you require for successful training, that is when the training happens. Then you need to deploy it, right? So you can deploy it for various applications, and then how do you improve the performance once you deploy it somewhere? You have to basically go deep into it. You can increase the accuracy, you can increase the capability, right? You can change the structure of your network, and you can do a lot of things beyond image classification. So this is how basically you try to develop the whole cycle of deep learning or machine learning. You train your model, you deploy it, and then you improve on your performance. So as I told you, it's PDCA cycle. So you go on doing it, okay? So let us try to understand the deep learning development cycle or machine learning development cycle. This is specifically more towards deep learning because you have to actually have the data set, you have to select the solver, you design your neural network, you train it, you profile it, and then debug it. So this is where the development happens. And then once you deploy it, what's effectively going to happen is you will get the feedback, and using the feedback you improve in your model again and go on doing this. So this is how basically it's going to happen. Okay, so you have this deep learning development cycle. You develop it, you deploy it, you get the feedback, and do it again and again to improve upon your system. So this is how it's going to happen. So let us try to understand deep neural networks, what I told you, and how it's going to extract the features. For example, if this is your raw data, right, the deep neural network is capable, this particular portion, okay, which is a deep neural network, is capable of extracting low level features, middle level features, and high level features. And then to this output of this stage, okay, you give it to a conventional neural network model, right? Feed forward back propagation type of model. I'm not going into the details, but this is a feed forward back propagation type of a network. So the feature extractor portion, okay, it's basically something which is called as a CNNs. So this total thing is a convolutional neural network. You have the feature extracted and then you give it to a feed forward back propagation type of a model, okay, then you get the result. So you can do a lot of task identification, identifying the face, then you have got a lot of training images with you. This network architecture, if you see, it has got 10 layers, so 10 layers, okay, and then it has got about 18 okay, so a lot of parameters with you. So, and then learning algorithms, okay, if you talk, so you're talking of about 1 billion parameters which will help you to extract the features, and then 30 exaflops. That basically means your algorithm which you use for deep neural network, which is a convolutional neural network, is about 30 exaflops, and it requires 30 GPU days. 30 GPU days is a lot of amount, okay, a lot of amount of time. Okay, so we are not going into the details, but this is how it's going to happen. So deep learning for computer vision, if you talk about, you can do image classification, you can do image classification with localization, you can detect various objects, so this object detection, and then you can do segmentation, right? So this is image segmentation, a lot of applications which you can develop using deep learning, okay. So then you can do annotations, okay, you can do this landmarking, okay, for facial expressions, emotion recognition. Then you can have this annotation as a bounding box. You can do lines and splines for detecting roads, okay. Then you can do text annotation, then you can do polygon annotation for annotating animals, then you can do segmentation, and then you can do video annotation as well, okay. So there are a lot of ways by which people are using deep learning for doing all this. Then for autonomous cars, right, detection, decision making, and all of this. So now when you say these models, there are a lot of models, actually there are a lot of models. And just to tell you, like, ImageNet is a large repository, it's a large data set, okay, of images, okay, and it's a labeled data set. So for classification task, if you use CNN, now there are various type of CNN models, right? You have AlexNet, VGGNet, GoogleNet, ResNet, DenseNet, MobileNet. So there are about 200 networks coming up on the internet daily, okay, and these are all trained networks. It requires a lot of time to train these networks on your own data set, and there are already trained networks available. So those are called as pre-trained models. Pre-trained models, okay. So you can use those pre-trained models, further train it with your data set so that you can use it for your own data set. So this is how basically people are developing their applications now. This is a network zoo which tells about a lot of networks available which you can use it for your application development. And this is a sample representation of a detect net, right? This is a graph representation of your network, and the various frameworks which I told you, this is actually representation of a cafe model, right? So you can use PyTorch, you can use Chainer, you can use TensorFlow, you can use Cafe2, MXNet, and so on and so forth for developing these models. So when you try to develop these models and use it for training and inferencing, if it's a CPU based application development as against the GPU based application development, so this is the difference, right? If you have just one GPU, you can process about 140 images per second. I'm talking of Inception v3 network. And if you have 8 GPUs, you can process about 1007 images per second. When you talk of CPU, right, it will not be near to this at all. It will be somewhere around 10 or 20 images per second. Okay, so this is how the difference is when you try to process it with CPU as against GPU. So if you see the top 500 list of supercomputers, they all have actually GPUs into it. So many cores you are talking of. When I say so many cores, okay, this basically means you are talking of parallel computing here. And internally, right, the GPUs use massively parallel computing. So this is how it is. You have your serial and parallel tasks. So this is CPU architecture. This is a GPU architecture. You can use FPGAs, right? And you can use virtual processing units. So I'm not going into the details of anything, but this is what you need. You can work on CPU, but the speed at which you are working will be reduced, right? And then you can use GPUs for improving it. You can use FPGAs for improving it still, okay? And this is how it's going to happen. So when you talk of deep learning for NLP, you have automatic summarization, machine translation, natural language generation, part of speech tagging. All of this, people are using it. So, how NLP was done before DL? We're talking of hidden Markov models, bag of words, anagrams, right? This is the way in which people used it. I'm not going into the details, but gradually, right, people used word to vec and all of this. One hot encoding people started, then dimensionality reduction, and now you are talking of neural machine translation. You require a lot of multilingual corpus. You are trying to use supervised learning. This is the recurrent neural network model which you use, okay, and so on and so forth. People started using LSTMs because you are talking in real time with time series, right? So you have an encoder and a decoder type of a model which you use. And the latest one is BERT, which gives you a lot of power, right, for neural networks in neurolinguistic and linguistic areas, right? So this is how the training time reduces of GPT-1, GPT-2 as against ResNet, BERT, and all of this. I'm not going into the details, but just trying to see that because of GPUs, you do it in just 47 minutes, okay, with about 8.3 billion parameters. So this is how the power of parallel computing on neural networks and machine learning is. So this is just how do you mix NLP and CV, okay, trying to have captions based on the images and automatic generation, right? So yeah, that's it. So that's it from my side. Any questions? If anybody has, I'm free for answering that. Thank you for listening patiently. Yeah. So yeah, if nobody has any questions, then it's fine. So yeah, so we'll stop. And if you're interested for any of these type of trainings, you can talk to our team. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so.
Thank you so much. Oh, I think we have one. Dr. Satya, are you still there?
Yeah.
I think we have one question from Kristen.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yes, deep learning is applied for supply chain and logistic because that is where optimization comes into play, right? And this is where actually the need is. For example, optimizing your routes, optimizing lot of supply chain stuff. That is where it's being used. Yeah, and I do consulting for some companies which employ these type of supply chain and logistic things. Yeah. So route optimization, fuel optimization, because of which a lot of other things come into play. Yes. So resource management, all of this is where deep learning needs to be used, and it's being used. Yes.
All right, thank you so much for that. Any more questions? Okay, Dr. Satya, I think we don't have any more questions from our delegates, so
Yeah.
we can end this webinar. And we appreciate all the time for those who attended. And we're going to send a follow-up email so that if you are interested in attending this course, we can give you all the information that you need.
Yeah, so we can tell the delegates that since this is a course which is multidimensional in nature, in a sense that they need to know Python, they need to know mathematics, statistics, right, and various tools. So we can do courses only for tools, we can do courses with statistics, we can do theoretical and hands-on with TensorFlow or Caffe, right, something like this. We can inform them as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure. Thanks everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a
Have a
nice
great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.